In a quiet suburban home, Elena Marquez was more than just a nanny. She was the heart of the household. But when whispers of doubt and cruel accusations surfaced, one small box held a secret that would unravel everything. A single piece of paper inside would rewrite the past and change the future forever. What was hidden in that box? And who was Elena really? Elena Marquez stepped into the Harper household on a crisp autumn morning, her modest suitcase in hand. At 32, she carried the weight of a life shaped by resilience and quiet determination. The Harpers, Jonathan, a driven corporate lawyer, and Claire, a pediatric surgeon, lived in a sprawling colonial home in upscale Westbridge, Connecticut. Their 8-year-old son, Noah, was a bright, curious boy with a mop of chestnut curls and a penchant for asking questions that made adults pause. Elena was hired as their live-in nanny, a role she embraced with warmth and precision. From the start, Elena blended into the Harpers' world seamlessly. She woke Noah each morning, prepared his breakfast of oatmeal with sliced bananas, and walked him to the bus stop, her laughter mingling with his as they played I Spy along the way. Her days were filled with routine: school pickups, soccer, practices, and bedtime stories. But beneath her calm exterior, Elena carried a past she rarely spoke of: a childhood in a small New Mexico town, a mother who worked 3 jobs, and a promise to herself to build a better life. The Harpers trusted Elena implicitly. Claire, often exhausted from long hospital shifts, appreciated Elena's knack for keeping the house in order. Jonathan, perpetually buried in case files, relied on her to manage Noah's schedule. Yet, as months turned into years, Elena noticed subtle shifts. Claire's colleagues at the hospital, during rare visits to the house, would raise eyebrows when Elena answered the door. "Oh, you're the nanny," one doctor said, her tone clipped, as if Elena were merely a fixture. At Noah's school events, other parents whispered when Elena stood beside Claire, their glances lingering on her simple jeans and sweater compared to Claire's tailored blazers. Elena brushed it off. She loved Noah like her own, and his trust in her was unwavering. He'd cling to her hand during thunderstorms, whispering, "You're my safe place, Elena." She kept a small wooden box in her room, locked with a tiny key, where she stored mementos: a faded photo of her mother, a locket from her grandmother, and a folded piece of paper she never opened. It was her anchor, a reminder of who she was beyond the title of Nanny. But the whispers grew louder. At a neighborhood barbecue, a mother named Vanessa, whose husband was Jonathan's law firm partner, cornered Elena by the dessert table. "You're so good with Noah," she said, her smile tight. "It's almost like you're part of the family, but, you're just the nanny." The words stung, but Elena smiled politely, her fingers tightening around her glass. She excused herself, retreating to the kitchen, where Noah found her wiping down counters she'd already cleaned. "Why do you look sad?" he asked, his brown eyes searching hers. She knelt, ruffling his hair. "Just thinking about home," she said, her voice steady. That night, Elena lay awake, staring at the ceiling of her attic room. The Harpers were kind, but the world around them was not. She wasn't just the nanny. She was the one who bandaged Noah's scraped knees, who knew he hated broccoli but loved carrots, who read him The Hobbit until he fell asleep. Yet, the label clung to her, a reminder of her place in their polished world. She thought of the box, its contents a secret she'd guarded for years. It wasn't time to open it. Not yet. As winter approached, Claire began spending more time at the hospital, preparing for a promotion to chief of surgery. Jonathan's firm took on a high-profile case, leaving him distracted and short-tempered. Elena became Noah's constant, the one who helped him build a model rocket for the science fair, who listened to his dreams of becoming an astronaut. But the distance between the Harpers grew, and Elena sensed it. At dinner, Claire and Jonathan barely spoke. their silences heavy. Noah, ever perceptive, would glance at Elena, as if seeking reassurance. One evening, while tucking Noah into bed, he clutched her hand. "Are Mom and Dad mad at each other?" he asked. Elena hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Sometimes grown-ups have a lot on their minds," she said. "But they love you, and that's what matters." Noah nodded, but his eyes lingered on her, as if he sensed she carried her own burdens. The turning point came at Noah's 9th birthday party. The Harpers hosted a lavish event in their backyard, complete with a bouncy castle and a magician. Elena coordinated everything, from the cake to the guest list, but stayed in the background, refilling juice pitchers and clearing plates. Vanessa, the same mother from the barbecue, approached Claire, her voice loud enough for Elena to hear. "You're so lucky to have such reliable help," she said, gesturing toward Elena. "It must be nice to have someone so dedicated." The word dripped with condescension. Claire, distracted, nodded absently, but Noah overheard. He tugged at Elena's sleeve, his face flushed. "You're not just help," he whispered fiercely. "You're Elena." That night, Elena sat on her bed, the wooden box in her lap. Her fingers traced its edges, but she didn't open it. Instead, she made a decision. She would stay, for Noah, no matter how the world saw her. But the box, and its secret, loomed larger than ever. The following spring brought change to the Harper household. Claire's promotion was confirmed, making her one of the youngest chiefs of surgery in the state. Jonathan's case, a corporate merger gone wrong, dragged on, pulling him into late nights at the office. Elena remained the steady center, her days revolving around Noah's routines. But the whispers from the outside world began to seep into the house. At a parent-teacher conference, Elena sat beside Claire as Noah's teacher praised his creativity. Another mother, Karen, leaned over and said to Claire, "It's so sweet that you bring your nanny to these things. She must feel so included." Claire's smile faltered, and Elena felt a familiar pang. She excused herself to the restroom, splashing cold water on her face. In the mirror, she saw a woman who had built a life on her own terms, yet was reduced to a label by those who didn't know her. Back at home, Noah began asking questions about Elena's life before Westbridge. "Where did you grow up? Do you have a family?" he'd ask, his curiosity insatiable. Elena shared bits and pieces, stories of her mother's tamale recipe, the desert sunsets of New Mexico, but kept the deeper truths locked away. She wasn't ready to explain the choices that led her here, or the paper in the box that held her past. Claire, meanwhile, noticed the growing tension. One evening, after Noah was asleep, she found Elena folding laundry in the kitchen. "You're so good with him," Claire said, her voice soft. "I don't know what we'd do without you." Elena smiled, but the compliment felt hollow. She wanted to be seen, not just as a caretaker, but as a person with her own story. "I'm glad I can help," she replied, her tone neutral. Jonathan's stress began to spill over. One night, he snapped at Elena for forgetting to pack Noah's soccer cleats. "You're supposed to keep things organized," he said sharply. Elena apologized, but the sting lingered. Later, Noah crept into the kitchen where Elena was scrubbing dishes. "Dad didn't mean it," he said, his voice small. "He's just tired." Elena nodded, pulling him into a hug. "I know, kiddo. Grown-ups get grumpy sometimes." The neighborhood's judgment grew bolder. At a school fundraiser, Vanessa and Karen cornered Elena near the silent auction table. "You must love living in that big house," Vanessa said, her eyes gleaming. "It's not like you'd get that kind of life back where you're from." Elena's jaw tightened, but she kept her composure. "I'm here for Noah," she said simply, walking away. Behind her, she heard Karen whisper, "She's so defensive. It's just a job." The cracks widened when Claire's sister, Rachel, visited from Boston. Rachel, a marketing executive with a sharp tongue, treated Elena with polite detachment. During dinner, she asked Claire, "How do you manage with just a nanny? Don't you worry about Noah getting too attached?" Elena, clearing plates, froze. Claire laughed it off, but the comment hung in the air. Later, Noah found Elena in the garden, pulling weeds with more force than necessary. "Aunt Rachel's wrong," he said. "You're not just anything." Elena smiled, but her heart ached. The wooden box became a silent companion. Elena would hold it at night, her fingers brushing the lock, but she never opened it. The paper inside was a truth she wasn't ready to face, not with the Harper's world teetering. But Noah's faith in her was unshakable. One afternoon, while working on a history project about family trees, he asked, "Elena, where do you fit on my tree?" She laughed, deflecting. "I'm like the cool aunt who brings cookies." But his question lingered, stirring something deep within her. As summer approached, Claire and Jonathan's marriage strained further. Arguments erupted over missed dinners and unspoken resentments. Elena overheard them one night, their voices sharp through the walls. "You're never here," Jonathan said. "Noah needs you." Claire's reply was cold. "And you think I don't know that? I'm doing this for us." Elena stayed silent, her loyalty to Noah keeping her anchored. At a community picnic, the whispers reached a peak. Vanessa, emboldened by wine, approached Elena in front of a crowd. "You're so devoted," she said loudly. "But let's be real. You're not family. You're paid to be here." The words cut deep, and Elena felt eyes on her. Before she could respond, Noah, who had been playing nearby, ran over. "Stop it," he shouted, his voice trembling. "Elena's more family than you'll ever be." The crowd fell silent, and Elena gently pulled Noah away, her heart pounding. That night she sat with the box again, her resolve wavering. The secret inside could change everything, but it could also break the fragile bond she'd built. She tucked it back under her bed, deciding to wait. But Noah's outburst had shifted something. The truth was closer to the surface than ever. Summer in Westbridge brought long days and simmering tensions. Elena continued her duties, but the weight of the neighborhood's judgment pressed harder. Noah, now 9.5, grew protective of her, glaring at anyone who spoke to her with condescension. At soccer games, he'd insist she sit with the parents, not on the sidelines with other nannies. "You belong with us," he'd say, his small hand tugging her along. Claire and Jonathan's marriage continued to fray. One evening, Elena overheard them arguing about a weekend getaway Claire had planned without consulting Jonathan. "You're pulling away," he accused, "and Noah's caught in the middle." Claire's voice cracked as she replied, "I'm trying to hold everything together." Elena retreated to her room, her heart heavy. She wanted to help, but her role was undefined, more than a nanny, yet not quite family. The neighborhood's gossip took a darker turn. At a book club meeting Claire hosted, Vanessa and Karen speculated openly about Elena's past. "She's so secretive," Karen said, sipping Chardonnay. "No family, no boyfriend. What's she hiding?" Claire, distracted by her phone, didn't defend Elena, and the silence felt like a betrayal. When Elena overheard clearing wine glasses, she excused herself, her hands trembling. Noah sensed the shift. One afternoon, while they built a birdhouse in the garage, he asked, "Why do people say mean things about you?" Elena paused, hammer in hand. "Sometimes people don't understand what they can't see," she said. Noah frowned. "But I see you. You're the best." His words warmed her, but they couldn't erase the growing isolation. The breaking point came at the annual Westbridge block party. Elena, helping serve lemonade, overheard Vanessa telling a group of mothers, She's too comfortable here. It's like she thinks she's one of them." The laughter that followed burned in Elena's chest. She stepped away, retreating to the Harper's porch, where Noah found her. "Why do they hate you?" he asked, tears in his eyes. Elena knelt, wiping his cheeks. "They don't hate me, Noah. They just don't know me." But the words felt hollow, even to her. That night, Claire approached Elena in the kitchen. "I heard what happened," she said. "I'm sorry. I should have said something." Elena nodded, but the apology didn't erase the hurt. "I'm here for Noah," she said quietly. "That's what matters." Claire hesitated, as if wanting to say more, but left the room instead. Jonathan's behavior grew erratic. He began questioning Elena's decisions, why she let Noah stay up late to finish a book, why she didn't push him harder in math. "You're not his parent," he snapped one evening, his voice sharp. Elena stood her ground. "I'm doing what's best for him," she said, her tone firm. Jonathan stormed off, and Elena felt the walls closing in. Noah, meanwhile, grew obsessed with the wooden box. He'd seen Elena holding it once, her expression distant. "What's in there?" he asked one rainy afternoon as they played checkers. Elena smiled, deflecting. "Just old memories." But Noah's curiosity was relentless. "Is it a secret?" he pressed. Elena laughed, but her heart raced. The box held a truth that could upend everything, and she wasn't sure she was ready to face it. The tension reached a head when Rachel returned for a weekend visit. At dinner, she made another offhand comment about Elena's role. "It's great you have such reliable help," she said to Claire, as if Elena weren't at the table. Noah slammed his fork down. "Stop calling her that," he shouted. "Elena's not help. She's family." The room fell silent. Rachel laughed nervously, but Claire and Jonathan exchanged uneasy glances. Later, Elena tucked Noah into bed. "I'm sorry I yelled," he whispered. "I just hate when they talk like that." Elena smoothed his hair. "You don't need to fight my battles," she said. "But thank you." As she left his room, she felt the weight of the box again, its secret pressing against her resolve. The next morning, Claire pulled Elena aside. "Noah's too attached to you," she said, her voice strained. "It's not healthy. Maybe we need to set some boundaries." Elena's stomach dropped. "I'm here for him," she said. "I'm not trying to take your place." Claire nodded, but her eyes were distant. "I know," she said, "but things are complicated." That night, Elena sat with the box, her fingers trembling as she touched the lock. The paper inside held a truth that could explain everything, or destroy it. She wasn't ready to open it, but the cracks in the Harper household were growing too wide to ignore. Noah's loyalty, Claire's doubts, Jonathan's frustration. It was all converging. The secret couldn't stay buried much longer. Fall settled, over Westbridge, the leaves turning gold and red. Elena's days were a balancing act, keeping Noah grounded while navigating the Harpers' unraveling world. Claire's promotion consumed her, and Jonathan's case reached a critical point, leaving little room for family. Elena filled the gaps, but the neighborhood's scrutiny intensified. At a school play, where Noah played a tree with surprising enthusiasm, Vanessa approached Elena backstage. "You're so involved," she said, her tone syrupy. "It's almost like you're his mom." The words were a jab, and Elena felt them deeply. She smiled tightly, focusing on adjusting Noah's costume. But Noah overheard, his face darkening. "She's better than you," he muttered, loud enough for Vanessa to hear. The woman's smile faltered and she walked away. Claire noticed the incident and later confronted Elena. "Noah's getting too defensive of you," she said. "It's confusing for him." Elena's heart sank. "I'm not trying to confuse anyone," she said, I'm just doing my job. But the word job felt wrong, a betrayal of the bond she shared with Noah. Claire sighed. I know. It's just hard. Jonathan's frustration boiled over one evening when Elena forgot to sign Noah up for a science camp he'd wanted to attend. You're supposed to handle these things, he shouted. What are we paying you for? Elena stood tall, her voice steady. I made a mistake. I'm human. Jonathan stormed out, and Noah, who had been listening from the stairs, ran to Elena, hugging her tightly. Don't leave, he whispered. Please. Elena's throat tightened. I'm not going anywhere, she promised. The neighborhood's gossip reached a fever pitch at a PTA meeting. Karen, emboldened by the group's approval, suggested Elena was too close to the Harpers. It's inappropriate, she said, her voice carrying. She's not family. Claire, present but distracted, didn't respond. Elena, who had been helping set up chairs, left the room, her hands shaking. She drove to a nearby park, sitting on a bench until the cold seeped into her bones. The box, and its secret, felt like a ticking bomb. Noah's curiosity about the box grew relentless. One evening, while Elena was cooking dinner, he slipped into her room. She found him sitting on her bed, the box in his lap. Noah, she said, her voice sharper than intended. He looked up, guilty. I just wanted to know, he said. What's in it? Elena softened, taking the box from him. It's private, she said gently. But I promise, when the time's right, I'll tell you. Noah nodded, but his eyes were troubled. The tipping point came at a family dinner with Rachel, who was visiting again. She made another comment about Elena's role, this time questioning her qualifications. Do you even have a degree? She asked, her tone patronizing. Noah, fed up, stood up. Stop it, he shouted. You don't know anything about her. He ran to Elena's room, returning with the wooden box. Tell them what's in here, he pleaded, tears streaming. Tell them who you are. The room fell silent. Claire and Jonathan stared, confused. Rachel raised an eyebrow. Elena's heart pounded as she took the box, her hands trembling. The moment she dreaded had arrived. She unlocked it, pulling out a folded piece of paper, a birth certificate. She handed it to Claire, her voice barely above a whisper. This is Noah's. Claire's hands shook as she read it. Her eyes widened, and she looked at Elena, then Jonathan. This says, you're his mother, she stammered. Jonathan grabbed the paper, his face pale. What is this? He demanded. Elena took a deep breath, her voice steady despite the storm inside. 9 years ago, I gave birth to Noah. I was young, alone, and couldn't provide for him. I gave him up for adoption. You adopted him, and I found you 2 years later. I became his nanny to be close to him. The room erupted. Claire's voice broke as she asked, Why didn't you tell us? Jonathan's face was a mix of shock and anger. Rachel sat stunned. Noah, tears streaming, ran to Elena, clinging to her. You're my mom, he whispered. Elena nodded, tears falling. I've always loved you, she said. I just wanted to be near you. The revelation shattered the Harpers' world. Claire stormed out, unable to process it. Jonathan sat frozen, the birth certificate in his hands. Rachel left without a word. Elena held Noah, who sobbed into her shoulder. The secret was out, and nothing would be the same. The Harper household was a battlefield of silence in the days following Elena's revelation. The birth certificate, now a tangible weight on the dining room table, had shattered the fragile equilibrium of their lives. Claire hadn't spoken to Elena since the night of the confession, retreating to her office at the hospital or her bedroom, where she sat staring at old photos of Noah as a baby. Jonathan, grappling with betrayal, avoided Elena entirely, his interactions limited to curt nods. Noah, caught in the crossfire, clung to Elena, his questions relentless. "Why didn't you tell me? Are you leaving now?" Elena's heart broke with each query, but she held him close, promising, "I'm here, Noah. I'm not going anywhere." Elena moved through her days mechanically, preparing Noah's meals and helping with his homework, but the warmth of the household had vanished. The wooden box, now empty of its secret, sat on her dresser, a reminder of the truth she'd guarded for so long. She'd been 18, pregnant, and alone in New Mexico, her mother's health failing and no resources to raise a child. Giving Noah up for adoption had been her only option, a decision made with love, but laced with pain. When she'd found the Harpers 2 years later, through a private agency that allowed her to track the adoption, she'd taken the nanny position to stay close to her son. She hadn't planned to reveal the truth, not yet, but Noah's loyalty had forced her hand. Claire's absence was palpable. She worked longer hours, claiming urgent cases, but Elena saw the strain in her eyes during rare moments at home. One evening, as Elena folded Noah's laundry, Claire appeared in the doorway, her face drawn. "How could you keep this from us?" she asked, her voice low but sharp. Elena set down a t-shirt, meeting Claire's gaze. "I wanted to protect him," she said. "Telling you risked everything. My place here, my time with Noah. I couldn't lose him again." Claire's lips trembled, but she turned away without responding. Jonathan's reaction was colder. He confronted Elena in the kitchen a week later, his voice tight with anger. "You lied to us for years," he said. "You let us think you were just staff." The words stung, but Elena stood her ground. "I never lied about who I am to Noah," she said. "I love him. That's why I stayed." Jonathan shook his head, storming out, but not before muttering, "This changes everything." Noah, meanwhile, was a whirlwind of emotions. He oscillated between clinging to Elena and withdrawing into silence. At night, he'd crawl into her bed, asking questions about her past. "Did you miss me when I was a baby?" he asked one night, his voice small. Elena's throat tightened. "Every single day," she said, stroking his hair. "I carried you in my heart." Noah nodded, but his eyes were haunted, as if grappling with two worlds, one where Elena was his nanny, and another where she was his mother. The neighborhood's gossip, once a dull hum, exploded. Vanessa and Karen, who had caught wind of the drama through Rachel's indiscreet retelling, spread the story like wildfire. At a school event, Elena overheard whispers, "She's his real mom? How did she even get hired?" Parents stared, some with pity, others with judgment. Elena kept her head high, focusing on Noah, who held her hand tightly as they walked through the crowd. But the isolation was suffocating. Even the Harpers' housekeeper, Maria, who had always been kind, began treating Elena with cautious distance. Elena considered leaving. Late at night, she'd sit with a packed suitcase, staring at the wooden box. She could return to New Mexico, start over, and spare the Harpers further pain. But Noah's face, his fierce defense of her, anchored her. She couldn't abandon him, not after everything. Instead, she doubled down, attending his soccer games, helping with his science projects and reading him stories, even as Claire and Jonathan's silence grew heavier. The turning point came unexpectedly. Noah's school hosted a family history day where students presented projects about their roots. Noah, determined to include Elena, asked her for stories about her childhood. Hesitant but moved by his insistence, Elena shared memories of her mother's tamales, the desert stars, and the locket her grandmother gave her, the one now in the wooden box. Noah listened, wide-eyed, and worked late into the night on his project. At the event, Elena stood at the back of the auditorium, expecting Claire or Jonathan to attend, but neither showed, detained by work. Noah took the stage, holding a poster covered in photos and drawings. "This is my family," he began, pointing to pictures of Claire and Jonathan. "They adopted me and gave me a home. But this..." He held up a photo of Elena, taken during a picnic last summer. "Is my mom, Elena. She gave me life, and she's been here every day since." The room fell silent, parents shifting uncomfortably. Elena's eyes filled with tears as Noah continued. "She's from New Mexico, and she taught me about stars and strength. I have 2 moms, and I'm proud of both." The audience applauded, some hesitantly, but Elena felt the weight of their stares. Vanessa, sitting nearby, avoided her gaze. After the presentation, Noah ran to Elena, hugging her tightly. "Did I do okay?" he asked. Elena nodded, unable to speak. For the first time, she felt seen, not as a nanny, but as Noah's mother. That evening, Claire returned home early, her face pale. She'd heard about Noah's presentation from a colleague. She found Elena in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner. "He called you his mom," Claire said, her voice breaking. Elena set down the knife, bracing herself. "I didn't ask him to," she said. Claire shook her head. "I know, but it's true, isn't it? You're his mother." The words hung between them, heavy with unspoken questions. Claire sank into a chair. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Scared I'm losing him." Elena sat across from her, her voice soft. "You're his mom too, Claire. You've raised him, loved him. I don't want to take that away." Claire's eyes searched hers, and for the first time, there was a flicker of understanding. "I don't know how to do this," Claire said, "but I want to try." It wasn't reconciliation, but it was a start. Jonathan was slower to come around. He avoided the house, burying himself in work, but Noah's presentation lingered in his mind. One night, he found Elena in the living room, reading to Noah. He stood in the doorway, watching silently. When Noah fell asleep, Jonathan spoke. "I don't know how to trust you," he said. "But Noah does. And that's enough for now." Elena nodded, her heart heavy but hopeful. The road ahead was uncertain, but the truth was out, and Noah's love was her anchor. Winter blanketed Westbridge in snow, mirroring the tentative calm that settled over the Harper household. Elena's revelation had forced everyone to confront their roles, their fears, and their love for Noah. The path to healing was uneven, marked by small steps and lingering doubts, but the family began to rebuild. Claire took the first step toward reconciliation. She invited Elena to coffee one Saturday, away from the house. At a quiet cafe, she spoke openly for the first time. "I was angry," she admitted, stirring her latte. "Not just at you, but at myself. I felt like I'd failed Noah by not knowing." Elena listened, her hands wrapped around her mug. "I never meant to hurt you," she said. "I just wanted to be near him." Claire nodded, her eyes softening. "I see that now. He loves you, Elena. And I think we can figure this out together." The conversation marked a shift. Claire began including Elena in family decisions, asking her opinion on Noah's school activities or weekend plans. It wasn't perfect. Moments of tension flared, especially when Claire felt insecure about her role. But they were trying. Noah, sensing the change, thrived. He'd bounce between them, calling Claire Mom and Elena Mama Elena, a distinction he'd created himself. Elena cherished it, a sign that Noah was weaving their lives together. Jonathan's journey was slower. His pride had been wounded, and trust was hard won. but Noah's unwavering love for Elena chipped away at his defenses. One evening, while helping Noah with a model rocket, Jonathan asked Elena to join them. "You're good at this stuff," he said gruffly, handing her a screwdriver. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes. Over time, he began acknowledging Elena's role, even thanking her for small things. A packed lunch, a well-timed reminder about Noah's dentist appointment. The neighborhood's reaction was mixed. Vanessa and Karen, chastened by Noah's public declaration, dialed back their gossip, but others remained skeptical. At a winter festival, Elena overheard whispers about the nanny who turned out to be the mom. She ignored them, focusing on Noah, who was gleefully building a snowman with her. But the judgment stung, a reminder that her place in Westbridge was still precarious. Elena found unexpected allies. Maria, the housekeeper, apologized for her distance, admitting she'd been unsure how to navigate the drama. "You're good for Noah," she said one day, handing Elena a cup of tea. "That's what matters." A few parents at school, moved by Noah's presentation, approached Elena with kindness, asking about her life in New Mexico. It wasn't acceptance from everyone, but it was enough to keep her grounded. Noah's bond with Elena deepened. He began, asking more about her past, and she shared stories of her mother's resilience, her own dreams of becoming a teacher, and the locket in the wooden box. One afternoon, he asked to see it. Elena hesitated, then handed it to him. Inside was a tiny photo of her holding him as a newborn, taken the day before she gave him up. Noah stared at it, then hugged her tightly. "I'm glad you found me," he said. Elena's tears fell silently as she held him. The wooden box, once a vessel of secrets, became a symbol of hope. Elena filled it with new mementos: Noah's drawings, a photo from the birthday party, a note from Claire thanking her for being part of their family. The past was no longer a burden. It was a foundation. As spring approached, the Harpers and Elena found a new rhythm. They weren't a conventional family, but they were a family nonetheless. Elena's role had shifted. Not just a nanny, not just a mother, but a vital part of Noah's world. The whispers of Westbridge faded, replaced by the quiet strength of their bond. One evening, as Elena tucked Noah into bed, he looked at her with his father's serious eyes. "I'm glad you're my mom," he said. "Both of you." Elena kissed his forehead, her heart full. "I'm glad too," she whispered. For the first time in years, she felt whole. Thank you for joining Elena, Noah, and the Harpers on this emotional journey of truth and family. If their story touched you, please support our channel. Subscribe, share, and join our community, too. Dive into more heartfelt tales that reveal the power of love and resilience. Your support brings these stories to life. Thank you.